Fantastic. All right. Well, welcome everybody. We're back for episode 2 of the PM podcast and the future of work. So this is my partner Dwayne Wilkins. I'm Dave Brezler. We are both PMs in the New York area, and we met each other through the offshore wind experience and have continued on with a lot of varying experiences after that. And we are going to treat a very special topic today. Um,
Absolutely.
we're going to call it. What are we going to call it, Dwayne?
Uh, the journey of solopreneurship.
I
Can
love
we
it.
say it
I
that
love
way?
it. Solopreneurship. We are both solopreneurs.
Yes.
We both have some experience with solopreneurship. So why don't we dive right in?
Let's do it. So, to kick off, Dave, we were having a really good conversation. That might have been a week ago, maybe last weekend, about solopreneurs and about scaling, right? And I think in business, most people think you're supposed to scale. You got to scale. You got to grow. You got to grow. And in the conversation, as I was saying this, you kind of stopped me and said, "Hey, but what if the goal isn't to grow? What if the goal is to stay a solopreneur and just double down on capacity, but not get too big? As my grandfather would say, too big for your britches, right?" So you stopped me and said,
I
"Hey,
think I think our grandfathers were in the same spot because mine used to tell me the same thing.
oh, that's funny. That's funny. They went to the same school of
We went
grandpaism.
to the same school, Hard Knocks, right?
Absolutely. And so Dave had stopped me and said, wait a minute, what if the goal isn't to grow? And I never
Right.
thought about that, but that's true. Everybody who gets in business for their own reasons and they have their own goals, right? And, before we say you should grow, you should do this, you should do that, it's more about asking what is the end result that person wants, and everybody's allowed to be who they are. So, Dave, would you mind elaborating a little bit on the feedback you gave me as we started having that conversation, and maybe we could dive a little bit deeper from there?
Y- Yeah, absolutely. I remember when I was going through the startup incubator here in Westchester County, and there were a lot of questions specifically about, what's your future perfect, right? What is it that you want to look like 20 years from now in business? What do you want to be in 50 years in business? And
Yeah,
and the question is always, right, what is you got to circle back to what is your why. Well, my why was to try to build something that not necessarily was the deepest or widest possible, but had the strongest impact, right? Because
yeah,
my business was centered around both project management and data analytics, right? Two of the most
yeah.
critical skills in business right now, especially with the advent of AI, that is, a recurring theme in our podcast. But
Yeah.
the point that I'm driving at is, even as an entrepreneur, if I want to have this massive impact, I don't necessarily have to have 20 people in my office. I don't
Right.
have to have 100 people in my office. I have to I have to take the right data set and produce the appropriate data product, the data visualization product that people will look at and go, "Whoa, I did not think of those numbers that way."
Right.
Right?
Yep.
And that will attract investment,
Hmm.
that will attract other clients, that will
Hmm.
attract other people looking for analysis and insights, right?
Hmm.
I don't need 20 people for that. I need myself, my laptop, and my software, right?
Yeah.
Because it's not necessarily always about, if you look at my portfolio is all visualization of public data sets that nobody has looked at, right? That everybody's like, yeah, I'm sure that there's numbers on that, but nobody knows what they actually are.
Yeah. Yep.
And that is stuff that is powerful, because if you can take data sets, and I'm just using myself as the example, right? But you could be doing anything. You could be creating, the next FireWire plug, right? Or here's a really great example. Here's a really great example. How much money do you think people that invented safety pins or paper clips make in a year?
Shoot, couple million
It's got to be a few
at
million,
least.
right? That was
Yeah.
one person that came up with those designs, right?
Hmm.
One person. And they sold they had a patent on the design. They sold they started with a small company to produce these things. All of a sudden, everybody had to have them, right? And
Right.
here we are, iPhones and AI and virtual reality. Was it? How many people use safety pins?
Everybody.
And it's 100 years later,
Yeah. They
right?
still come with your clothes or something like that. If you buy a new
It-
suit shirt, new suit, yep, it's all there.
right.
It's all
So
there.
it's at least 100 years old and maybe more, right? Could be 110
Yeah.
years, something like. But that design, right, is that old and people are still using it. And if you come up with, here's another great example, right? W.E.B. Du Bois came up
Hmm.
with very critical analysis of geographic and demographic uh, percentages and geographies in the area of Atlanta where he lived,
Hmm.
right,
Hmm.
at his time, which is not even it wasn't even the 1900s. It was before that, right? But it's still people are still looking at those visualizations of data
Yeah.
more than 100 years later. Okay,
Yeah.
that's impact, right? And he did that by himself. He didn't have a company, a big, he didn't have a big firm that he was working with. He did that on his own.
Yeah.
But the people are still looking at those visualizations as insight, right? And the thing is, that's the same thing a solopreneur could do. Solopreneur might just want to create things that are impactful and be able to pay their bills and be able to make sure that they put a little bit away for retirement and make it to the end of 25 years or 30 years or whatever that is, 40 years, um, and you know get to the point where they can go, okay, it's time for me to close up shop, sell the business,
Hmm.
and then that's their story. A
Yeah.
lot of people get into business not necessarily because they're immediately trying to scale, but because they want to develop something that is career long, has a reasonable income, and allows them to manage their lives the way that they want to manage their lives. That's success by every metric.
Yeah. You know what's funny? I watched a podcast today talking about the different types of success. I don't know why my screen's doing that. The different types of success and what that means to people. So bringing it back to your point, somebody may want to, buy a couple investment properties. They just maybe have a spreadsheet or AI that helps them manage that. And that's good enough because owning a couple rental properties or something like that,
Yeah,
um, could retire somebody, take them, make them enough money, develops the asset. They don't have to manage other people, which we know in
right.
project management is the hardest part.
That's the
Okay,
whole that
right?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
and then
So and on just on that, because let me I'm sorry to jump in, but just on
go ahead.
that theme that you're saying right now, some folks, when they get into business, don't want to manage other people because
Yeah, it's not easy.
they don't have those people skills, right?
Right.
They don't and they don't want the headaches, right? Because let's be real, managing people is difficult, right? You're going to have difficult conversations, you're going to have difficult situations, you're going to have difficult outcomes, right? You got to make payroll, you got to make benefits payments, you got to taxes and the whole thing.
Yep.
Not everybody wants to do that,
Nope.
right?
Nope. Nope. It's annoying. You want it to be easy.
Yeah, right. And they just want to be like, look, I know that my rent is this much. I know my food bill is this much. I know if I want to
Yep.
buy a new car every 5 years, I got to have this much in the bank, right? That means that per year I have to get XYZ, and then
Mm.
every 2 or 3 years I have to raise my rates by 2 percentage points or whatever it is. I'm just coming up with garbage numbers just to say numbers, right? Like you would
Yeah.
obviously raise your
Funny,
rates by
funny.
4% every 5 years, but
Right. Five.
but but the point is that you can do that calculation, you can do that cold hard calculation. It's very easy to come up with those numbers and figure out what you're supposed to do.
Yeah.
Try to do that for 15 people in your office.
Gonna be hard. So to that point, let me ask you this question. Um, do you think that most people who start a business, and most start as solopreneurs, right? Do you think that most people go in with a plan like that, or do you think that's the project manager and you speaking? Do you think most people, they start a business usually, oh, it was a good idea, I wasn't sure,
Yeah.
and then they started? Do you think that most people jump in saying every 5 years I got to increase my price, I have to use this tool, this software, take this data about Atlanta, right, and then use that to deploy a solution which will get me X amount of dollars in X amount of time so that I can, have a meaningful life, this, right? So I can have a meaningful life or retire with some money.
Right. No, I seriously don't. That's an awesome question, and no, I absolutely do not think that people have that in mind when they go into it at all.
Do you think they
And in
should?
fact, they should, right? And
Yeah.
right, to your point, yeah, that's my prod and yours, right? Because you and I talk a lot outside of the podcast, and I know I said this last time, but people are going to start thinking this when they see a couple of these episodes. Like, man, somebody's just got to wander around with a microphone next to these guys, because.
Yes.
But the simple fact of the matter is, yes, I came up with that because I worked for close to a decade on major project programs, and I've seen the long range version of everything, right?
Yeah. Yep.
So yes, I projected out and understood what that all meant. Also, when I went through, I'm going to go back to what I said earlier. When I went through the startup incubator here in Westchester County, uh, which is called Westchester Catalyst, by the way, everybody should in the area should give it a look, because it's a great program. It has a lot of very important information in it. Um, and they use what's called the Y Combinator approach, which I'm sure you've heard of once or twice.
Hmm.
It- the point is, yes, you think that lengthy distance ahead. Most people who are going into business don't think that. Most people that are going
Nope.
into business are just thinking, I've got a great concept, I've got a great product, I've got a great angle on this particular thing, I've got some sort of differentiation on whatever the thing is that I'm working on, and I can cause that to produce money for me,
Yeah.
right? And no, they don't think of, well, what happens 10, even 5 years down the road. They don't
Hmm.
think, okay, I know that I know that this angle works, but I haven't figured out how many people that means in the factory, in the office, in the field, or whatever it is.
Right.
They just know that they've got this one specific thing that they're chasing, and that it will make them money, right? Um,
Right.
so yes, to absolutely follow up with what you're saying, I wish more people did, because that would prevent a lot of businesses from failing, right?
Yeah.
Because you
Yeah.
can't run your business 5 years from now on prices that you were charging 5 years ago, because we just came through this, and now we're having a soft landing and everything's re-regulating itself. But look, we had inflation, right? And that's just a look at the numbers. That's not a commentary on what side you believe in. That's just a look. It went
Yeah.
up and it went back down, right?
Right.
But that's not the first time in history that has happened, and it won't be
No.
the last time in history that has happened. So
No.
inflation goes in cycles. That's a known quantity, right? So if you don't
Yeah.
have that built into your future calculations, you're not making it past a certain point, because you won't be able to operate your business on prices you were charging 5 years ago. End of story.
Right. So you know what's funny about that? Even folks that people start a business, a lot of times they'll give stuff away for free, or they'll
Yep.
do events and say it's free, and they'll pay out of pocket, but that's not sustainable, not for a long term. And at some
Nope.
point,
Because
and here's
eventually your pocket's getting empty.
right, and here's and then you devalue the event or the product or whatever it is, right? But when I give advice when it comes to like event planning, I'll say, look, you need to put a margin of profit at the end of the event so that you can plan the next event, right? And that is projecting, a word that you use. I don't know if the average solo or entrepreneur knows what that means, but I hope after this podcast that they understand. If not, the first episode, second episode, maybe the 100th episode is that you have to predict or project on the project. Okay, what's going to happen? What are the fail safes for that process? What's this going to cost? And even to the point that we spoke about last week. Okay, you don't want to hire employees, but you might need to hire an accountant. Now, how much is that going to cost?
Well,
How
so
much are taxes?
that's a super, like, that's got to go into your annual business calculation, because the accountant,
Yeah.
your payroll software, your Microsoft implementation, those are what are called operational costs, right? That's the
Yep.
cost of doing business. And you
Yep.
gotta pay, and this isn't specific to New York. You gotta pay quarterly taxes on your business. That's a known quantity, right?
Yep.
And so if you don't do that and you don't understand what those calculations are, by the end of the first year, you're going to be screwed, to use a very technical
Absolutely.
term, right? Like,
Right.
there's really no other, like, you're going to be so far in the red that you're paying to show up at places, and you're paying, and then you got to pay for the operational costs. At a certain point, you got to make money. There's a simple truth that's not getting that everybody that you mentioned when you were leading up to this is missing, right? You get into business because you're supposed to make money.
Yes.
The purpose of business is profit, right? The
Yeah.
purpose of government is to take care of people. That's that's generally where the clash happens.
Yes.
Okay.
Or to control, and not control in a bad way. Resources, manage the resources that
Resource
people
management.
need. There you
Yeah.
go. And a lot of people, even when it comes to taxes, they don't understand that. Like, this is part of a protection for you if you ever need it, right? Somebody's got to oversee it while you're doing business.
So somebody's got to do that, right? So
Yeah.
before that leaps off into a spot that's
Another
not related to the
conversation.
podcast, right? The point is that those are that's where the conflict point generally happens. Thing number one. But thing number two, if you're getting into business, you're getting into business to make a profit. That's the sole purpose of your business, is to make
Hmm.
money, right? And so if what you're doing is showing up and you're paying money, that's the opposite of what you're supposed to be doing, right?
Yes. Yes.
Unless that paying money acquires you clients, and those clients are paying you for your services, so that the next time you show up, then you have more money to spend, right?
Yeah.
Because what happens in that calculation, that's called the cost of client acquisition, right?
Hmm.
So if you and I have both been to a number of conferences together for offshore wind space, American Clean Power in Rhode Island, IPF did you go to the Atlantic City one, or did you go
Yep. That
to
was my first one.
all right, so let's just take those two conferences for example, right? You go to IPF in Atlantic City, right? The cost to get into IPF, if you don't have somebody sponsoring you, is $2,500
Yep.
for 3 days, right?
Not including travel or room and board.
Or food or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
you got to calculate in the hotel, your meals, you're gonna have to have a few drinks.
An
Like,
emergency fund just in case.
yeah, and you got to have reserve, right? An emergency
Yeah.
reserve. So now you're talking about easily 3 grand to start,
Yes.
right? Maybe 3,500 because you don't know how far you're going, right? If you're coming
Yes.
from
Yeah.
California, it's different than if I'm driving down to Atlantic City from New York.
Right.
It is not the same thing. So those are like all of those costs. Now, if I spend the $3,500, but in return I get 60,000 in contracts, right?
Hmm.
That's a 1 to 20 relationship,
Yep.
right? It's a one to
Absolutely.
20 relationship. You know what? I'll take that deal all day. If I have to spend $3,000 and I get 60 back, cool.
Hmm.
How many of these can I do
That's
in a
good.
year? Right?
Right. And at what capacity? And at what capacity? And that's another
Exactly.
word I think a lot of solopreneurs, staying on topic, uh, they
Hey,
don't
hang on just a sec.
understand
Hey,
capacity.
time out for a sec. That's
Yeah.
a really big if, right?
Right.
Because remember, you're spending that $3,000 on speculation,
Yes.
right? So if you're spending the 3,000 on speculation, you better have very high probabilities on the other side. What
Yeah.
is even better is for you to have been seeding the clouds and having these calls and making relationships and coming up with potential deals, and then getting everybody to the spot where, okay, look, we're all going to IPF, just bring the contract documents with you and we'll sign them at the conference, right?
Right. Right.
That's the spot you want to be in. Because if I have to spend the $3,000 for you to show up at the conference and just sign the papers, okay, good, I'll do that, right?
Yep.
But if I got to show up to the conference and I'm at the conference prospecting, I'm not sure that that's going to go well, right?
No. No. Yeah.
And I'm sorry to interrupt your question, but that's a those are that's the difference maker right there.
Yeah. I no, and that's good because as a solopreneur or again an entrepreneur, a lot of times folks, feel like they have to go to everything. The truth of the matter is, no, you shouldn't go to everything. You should do some like one, market research, who's going to be there. Two, you have to test your own product to see if people even want it. So if you're going to an IPF and you're going to spend the 3 grand, let's say you didn't have those conversations before. When you get there, you better be damn sure that you have something that makes sense. Maybe you've got some land, maybe you've got some revolutionary technology that they want, they just haven't found. That way, you're not wasting time and money, because the time and money that you spend at that place, now experiences are good, so that's another conversation. But if you're spending that there and getting nothing from it, you could have stayed home and worked more on the product or done more market research and found out, when these guys are going to be back again, come back next year or
Or
something
developed
like
other
that.
connections, or developed other connections, right?
Right, right. Or
Because
just follow them on LinkedIn.
right, exactly. And the thing is, you have the potential, even if you're not at the event, right? Because now that so much stuff is digital, I don't have to be anywhere. I
Hmm.
literally do not have to be anywhere. I could
Yeah,
be I could be in, the bottom end of Argentina, as long as there's a Wi-Fi connection, and produce a dashboard for you, right?
hmm,
Or
hmm.
heck, I could be in the coldest corner of Siberia,
That's right.
right? As long as there's a Wi-Fi connection, a reliable connection, and I can get this stuff to your inbox, doesn't matter. I can send you
Right.
the contract in an email. You can sign it with Adobe and send it back to me, and I can bill you, right? My invoice shows up to your email, and all you have to do is put in the card number. And then
Yep.
I don't you don't have to give me cash, you don't have to hand me gold coins or whatever it is.
Mhm.
All of that can be digital.
Yeah, no, that's very true. So I want to carry something back from the conversation we had that started this conversation on this podcast is tools,
Oh
right?
wow, yeah.
When we talked about solopreneurs, you said, nah, Dwayne, all they need is the right tools, especially with AI, even with what we've already had. A spreadsheet, Google Docs, Gmail, maybe Google Forms, Chat GPT, Squarespace, and a way to accept invoices if you use well, that's Sheets again. But let's say you've got PayPal, you've got a bank account, a business bank account that accepts Zelle, right?
Super
And
important.
or wires, right? Then those are the things you need just to do business. You don't have to scale, but you do need those things. So, what's your take on tools? Maybe some that you could share from your experience that are really helpful, that are force multipliers for solopreneurs. What's your take on that? How to prepare yourself with them and use them live and in action?
I'm so glad you asked that question because that's a that's a real easy way to fall down a rabbit hole and not come back out.
Right.
Because the amount of tools that are available right now and the amount of actions that need to be taken that are available right now are so wide and deep. It's tough to figure out how to get your head above the water before
Hmm.
before you even take the first stroke in the pool. The the
Yeah.
the critical thing, and I'm getting ready to write a blog post about this, but the the critical item related to AI tools,
Hmm.
right, is build, buy, or outsource. It's the same contracting question that everybody always asks. Build, buy, outsource, right? Do you need do you really need all that?
Right.
Right? The point is I started my business with a Microsoft implementation
Hmm.
before ChatGPT and Gemini and all that, and before Anthropic came out with Claude and all of that, right? I had a Microsoft implementation, and I
Hmm.
was able to do all of the things you saw me do, right, for the first
Yeah.
several
Yeah.
years. I did all of that with just a Microsoft implementation, a very basic website, and an unpaid social media channel on Instagram, right? I didn't
Yeah.
buy the subscription to but I marked it as a business channel, right? And that gives it a couple different things.
Yeah.
The
Get the
reason that
tools.
that's important is because you shouldn't be going at your business and saying, "All right, I'm going to open a business because this tool exists." Right? Open your business because of the things that we said earlier. You've got a product, you've got an angle, you have a process, right? You have a
Yeah.
differentiator on a previous thing, you created an iteration, right? It, craft beer used to be something that was an iteration on Budweiser and Heineken and whatever. But now craft beer is big business, right? Like
Huge business. Yep.
when Sam Adams came out, it was a big deal because nobody else was making beer because instead of Anheuser-Busch and the other companies that were making it. But
Yep.
now you've got these small microbreweries, and you got there's such an amount of beer snobbery, eh, which is bizarre. But the point is, and I totally can't keep up with it at all, right? Because there's like an IPA, there's a double IPA, there's a Northeast IPA, there's an ultra hoppy IPA, and I'm like, hop over that direction with the
with all the lingo. I just want to drink.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
just like, just I don't, I can't. So the the reason I'm bringing all of that up is because you've got a differentiator on something that already exists, supposedly,
yeah,
right?
yep, yep,
And you should focus on that. And then if when you, especially when you're talking about tools for business, right?
yeah,
The something like QuickBooks is a tool for your business. Microsoft is a tool for your business. Do you need to buy every bell and whistle for Microsoft in order for your business to operate? I didn't, right? And you and I are both project managers at very high levels. That we've overseen major projects, right? Both of us. And
yeah,
I don't need every single tool inside of Microsoft Project or Microsoft
yeah,
Office rather to make my business work. I do need Microsoft Project because I'm a project manager and people are going to ask me when I show up, can you put this in Microsoft Project? And my answer had better well be yes.
yes, right,
Right?
yeah,
It has to be yes. There is no other available answer, right?
right, right,
So it has to be yes. So the answer is when they call me and they go, "Hey, can you put this in project?" Obviously, yes, right? Because I have it.
right,
Um, and you want me to forward you the Gantt chart? Okay, cool. Right? No problem.
yeah, yeah.
Um, the answer to that question is always going to be yes for my business because that's what I do, right?
That's something you should have.
That's something I have to have. Otherwise, I have no legitimacy. Why would a project manager show up to any sort of engagement and they're like, "Can you put this in Microsoft Project?" Well, I don't use that really. Why are you here, right?
Right.
So
Yeah,
that's not what
that's the
no
standard.
one is going to accept that, right?
No, that's the standard. So,
So
you
just
said
to
you said
just,
something. Go ahead. Go ahead. Sorry.
just to wrap that all up, in terms of the AI question, right? Figure out what tool you need, right? I can create automations. I can create broad scale analysis. I can create meta tagging or meta analyses with the Copilot implementation that's inside of Microsoft Office that I have
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
it comes with the Office implementation, right?
Yes.
I can just ask Copilot to do specific things, right? And it'll point to, okay, go here and touch this button, and then you get your answer.
Mhm.
More than that, is there really stuff that I'm not changing the way, pardon me, that the large language model is doing the analysis in the background because that's not my modality, right? That's
Yeah.
for a different person. I'm not
Yep.
changing, the organization necessarily of the file structures because that's not my modality. I'm the guy closer to the apex of the structure who's
Hmm.
calling somebody and saying, "Hey, can you make this happen for me? When do you need it, Mr. Brezler?" Well, I need it
Yesterday.
in 20 days. I can give it to you in 22. Can you give it to me in 21? If we really push it and you buy us pizza on Friday, I will get you the pizza, right?
There you go.
Like
Yeah.
I have administrative reserve for pizza. You guys are covered, right?
Right. Right. Right.
So that's the wrap up that I wanted to say. Like, get the tool that you need for the direction and the task you're aiming at, not because it's shiny and pretty and it's sitting on the sidewalk, right?
Or it's the latest thing. The
Or it's
the
the
next
latest thing.
question I was going to ask you was, do you think it's important to not have too many tools? Because that's something I ran into in my own business. Not me per se, but other people. And I'm like, no, I need things streamlined. Like, as long as these things work together, I'll get you a result. But if I'm trying to manage too many tools, then I don't become dangerous with any of them and can't really implement them the way I need to help you, with your business or help me organize. It's the same with um social media and you're watching this podcast, that podcast, this one, that one, trying to get ideas. But at some point, you have to stop and implement something that you learned, right? So that you can get a result. Otherwise, you're just sitting on the couch all day. So, do you feel like people shouldn't use too many tools and just get like really, really dangerous with one or two, or should people have like 100?
So that's an excellent point, right? And the way that I'm going to respond to that is with a conversation I had with at um, over the weekend with a teacher, right? I was at a public event and I ran into I just ended up sitting at a table. We were both eating ice cream, right? Ended up sitting at the table with this teacher and his two little kids that were running around on the side. It was really cute. It's like, I'm just so glad summer is here and everything is much more relaxed now. And my wife is also a teacher, and we both really stressed out. But now June is over, and we get to hang out by the pool. And he said, there was recently a study done that teachers make I don't know how many decisions per day, right?
Mm,
And the thing is, having been a teacher myself before I was project management, you have to understand what that looks like.
right.
But having been a teacher and in the classroom, we bonded over this because, first of all, the number of decisions per day is a data point, right? So I was like, "Ooh, data,"
Right.
and he's
Hmm.
he's he's still working on the. I was just making decisions yesterday.
Yeah.
Teachers, when you're in the classroom, have to make multiple split-second decisions per second, right?
Yes.
If you've got 35 kids in the room, and let's just say for the sake of argument that those kids are 8-year-olds,
Hmm.
you have young ones, right? Imagine 35 phoenixes in a room.
We get a lot done. But exactly.
Right. So you would be, and just for everybody watching this, Phoenix is Dwayne's youngest, right? She's how old is she again?
11.
She's 11. So right before adolescence, right?
Yes.
And but she's past the really young stage. She's starting to
Yeah.
develop some higher
Character.
order processing skills, right? And
Yeah.
and her hormones are starting to kick on
Yeah.
because that's going to happen around 12 years old, right?
Yes.
So imagine 35 phoenixes in one room. Dwayne's like, nope. Right? And then imagine you're the teacher who has to deal with that for 185 days a year.
Yeah. Those
Okay.
poor teachers.
Those poor. So the reason I bring all of that up is because that 185-day marker, the reason teachers get to the end of the year and they're like, oi, right? That's called decision fatigue. It's not necessarily because I mean, yes, they have to plan, they have to grades, they're doing extra time, they got to come up with like they're doing stuff on the weekends and then they're going to conferences and all of this stuff, unquestionably. But what really causes the mental stress is decision fatigue because
Hmm.
you have to have the capability to make the right decision immediately within 1.5 seconds, not just for what's going on right then, but for that child's development off into the future.
Right. Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's a bigger weight on your shoulders. It's not so much like are you thinking about what are you doing right now, which you first of all have to do, but it's what is going to if the thing that I'm saying to this child right now or doing for this child right now or whatever it is for this child right now, is that going to do something to affect them into the future, right?
Right.
And the reason I'm bringing all of this up this way in the context of the question that you just asked is because it's the same with your technology implementation, right?
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
don't want to have 100 different bells and whistles bombarding you every day to where you got to make these split decisions every 1.5 seconds for your entire day,
Yeah.
and you don't get a summer break.
Right. No.
Right? You don't get 2 weeks
We
off
working
in,
right
in
now.
in February. You don't get winter break, right? You are
Nope.
in the office all day, every day for at least 300 days a year, right? Because it's,
Yeah.
national days off and,
Holidays
and
and
2 weeks of vacation and whatever.
Sabbath and
Yeah, yeah, like all of that. You
yep.
do not want to get because automatically your decision fatigue matrix increased,
Yes.
right? So
Dave, I get
the
decision fatigue. Sometimes I'm like, nope.
right, yeah, nope of the day. I'm like that's 600 decisions in 30 seconds. I'm not doing it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And you know that I'm the caretaker for my folks, right? If like the second
Hmm.
I walk into my parents' apartment, it is decision, 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 right?
Right.
there's
Right.
no break until I get to leave, right?
Yeah. Yes.
So the reason I'm bringing all that up in the context of technology and AI is you want to be the most effective with and efficient with whatever you're doing,
Yes.
right? You want to make sure that the one thing that you're going to use or implement or whatever it is the most efficient product for that action and will have multiplier effects as you go out.
Yeah. Yeah. The Bruce Lee concept. Practice one
Exactly.
punch 1,000 times, not 1,000 punches.
Sorry. Punch for
Amen.
2 inches behind your target.
That's
That's
right.
that's the other thing. You're not aiming for your target. You're aiming for 2 inches behind your target, right? Because
Yep.
that's how you attack that problem. Use the thing that's going to not just do the thing, but do two or three other things as you're doing the thing.
Yeah. It has like an after effect. It
Right.
sets you up. It's playing chess,
That's right.
right? You
3D
make
chess.
one move to set up your next move, right? And
Right.
I think before we lose time, project managers naturally do what you're talking about is we make a lot of micro decisions in split seconds. It's almost like a ninja, right?
Yeah.
You're a ninja, you're or Bruce Lee, and you're fighting the 1,000 guys, right? But before you hit the first guy, you made the decision on the next guy you're gonna hit, right?
Yep.
And then the guy behind you with the backwards fist punch. Um, which I think is a skill that a lot of entrepreneurs or solopreneurs probably need to have, and especially if you're going to be a solopreneur, right? Let's stick to that.
A
If you're going
million
to be a
percent.
solopreneur,
A
yeah.
million percent.
If you're not hiring me or Dave, you better dang well be able to hit the guy in front of you and the guy behind you at the same time, and see the guy with the gun down the hallway all at
Yeah.
once. If you're going to survive this thing, right?
Right.
So,
Right. Right.
so I think that's important. Let me ask you this, Dave. What um what do you think is the most important thing a solopreneur should do if they're listening to this today? If they had a day to just stop, what's the most important thing you think they should do to make sure that their business lasts past that that 4 to 5 year mark that most businesses tap out?
Contracts.
Contracts.
Right? And that doesn't necessarily mean contracts from the government or from bigger companies, but make sure you've got a steady client list that you know is a recurring revenue stream. That's where everybody
Mm-hmm.
fails, right? That's where
Mm-hmm.
everybody fails. Well, I couldn't keep the clients coming in, right?
Yeah.
That's where every single person in the first 3 years is like, oh well, we didn't make enough money on it, so we're gonna have to close it. So make sure and then contracts are are exactly that ongoing client list. Also make sure that you're accessing your local government, your state government, the federal government, right? Go to the Small Business Administration and say, hey, where are their contracts for the specific things that I'm doing? Um, and uh, make sure that you've got something that's going to sustain you, because people think that, oh, well, I'm just going to get private clients. People forget that
Yeah,
a government contract will take you 2 or 3 or 10 years down the road. Not, and probably not 10 years, but it will probably take you 5 years down the road, right?
absolutely.
So, before I know we're running long, so I don't want to make I could go. You, first of all, you know that I'm gonna, the second you say procurement, it's a 1 hour conversation. So
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I'm gonna end rant right there, because otherwise I'm gonna start rapping and
We should save that for the next one because this is good, especially for solopreneurs. And I think we covered a lot of like neutral ground and didn't drill deep on the subject of solopreneurs. And we're really about to get into it now. We're watching this movie called War Dogs with what's the guy's name? He was in uh he was in a movie with DiCaprio too. You know the guy.
oh,
Where they're Jonah Hill. Yeah. Have you
oh,
seen it?
okay. No, I haven't seen it.
With Jonah Hill and their supply, they found government based on a true story. They found government contracts to supply weapons to the U.S. government, which I didn't even think is a thing you could do. It's crazy, but it's based on a real story. And
100%.
finding those contracts are important for you either get a big bite at the apple or you get a lot of crumbs, but it's almost like guaranteed money, right?
That's the
Versus
whole point.
private clients.
That's the whole point, is that yes,
Yeah.
private clients, but like all this kind of stuff. A government contract is is that thing that's in the background that's paying your rent and keeping the lights
Yeah,
on while
yeah,
you're out there chasing all the other stuff, right?
yeah,
Um, and yeah,
yeah, man.
that you're right. This is a whole other podcast. Maybe we'll make that the next one.
We should continue it. We should continue it, even with tools. Maybe talk about some that are useful or how to integrate things, or maybe talking about some of the things you touched on, like data, because data is almost like your sword. You know what I mean? You can slice through things, especially talking to a client when saying, hey, the data shows that if you want to do X, you first have to do Y.
Right.
And so here's why you should hire me as your project manager, right? Or at least as a data, however you want to spin it. But data is weaponry, tools are weaponry, and maybe like what should be in your toolkit as a solopreneur or entrepreneur. Maybe that could be like the next thing.
I think you and I have to have another lunchtime conversation and really nail this down. But I know we're bumping up against time, so we should call it for this episode, and we're gonna bring back all the stuff that you and I have been talking about on the next one.
Let's do it, Dave. I'm excited. I'm glad that we've done our second show. We're gonna keep them coming
Score.
in, right? There's a lot of stuff that we can really get into. A lot of good trouble we can get into on this show. But again, I hope that it helps a lot of people understand being prepared, right? Because preparation beats piss poor performance. I think that's the
A
way that
hundred
goes.
percent.
Or proper
Like you,
preparation.
yeah. There's no such thing as tough. There is prepared and there's unprepared. To quote Denzel, right?
There you go.
So
Right.
the
Yes. Man
question
on
is
fire.
the question is, which one are you?
Amen to that. Yeah, man. No, I look forward to episode 3. Let's keep them coming and let's keep rolling. And I hope the audience stays with us.
Sounds good, man. Listen, have a great night. I'll see you soon.
All right, Dave. Take care.
See you soon. Bye bye.
All right. Peace.